Do you enjoy reading about true crime? The Murder Trails series explores some of Queensland's most infamous cases, including who killed Betty Shanks, Slim Halliday, the taxi driver killer, the rampage of Killer Cast, and Innocence Lost, the last man hanged in Queensland. Just some of the titles available at jacksim.com.au. I'm Jack Sim. Please support my local publishing business as I explore some of Queensland's dark past. Warning: strong content. This episode of Murder Trails includes references to true crime, murder and homicide, and to people who are now deceased. For more information, please read our description. Welcome to Murder Trails, presented by Jack Sim and Crime Tours Australia. Hello everyone, Jack Sim here from Ghost Tours Australia and Crime Tours Australia. Today I'm presenting our brand new podcast called Murder Trails, which is the official podcast for Crime Tours Australia. And joining me today is my dear friend and a very well-known man and lover of history, Councillor Paul Tully. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Jack. Good to join you. Yeah, we have known each other for 30 or 40 years.
Bloody long time.
Yeah, long time.
You get less for murder.
Less for murder in Queensland.
That's that old joke. Paul and I have collaborated in the past when we were on 4BC with the crime show that I run on radio there for 12 years. And Paul's came on my various tours that I've run in the past, and as Ipswich Council has been very supportive of my heritage tourism business over a long time. And I wanted Paul to be part of this new series. One of the things that the Murder Trails podcast is intending to do is to not just share the details of historic crimes, but then also the locations of those crimes and a lot of the stories and folklore behind those tales as well.
Yeah, it's really important that because, some of the scenes are not much different from what they were 50 or 60 years ago, but, just some of the folklore, as you say, some of the information, and it's generally correct because, people put that down just to, third party, commentary, but often that's really, really strong and correct. So over the years, and I've seen you on the scene of lots of crimes and also the Ipswich Cemetery. We've been through the tours there and the memorial to one of the Kelly gang, or the supposed Kelly gang members in the Ipswich Cemetery.
Well, so I think we might do that as an episode.
That would be a good one. Yeah.
Sure.
So we'll take away some of the history from Victoria and Glenrowan.
Well, I'm for those that don't know, my name is Jack Sim. I'm the owner of Ghost Tours Australia and Crime Tours Australia, and I publish under my own name as well. And my aim is to share with people these incredible tales of the past, and as Paul was saying, look into some of the background of the characters involved, and to talk about the locations themselves. Paul, what do you think about the fascination that people have with true crime these days?
Look, I think it's stronger than ever. If you go back to the era of the 50s and 60s, in those days, the Courier Mail was very strong on that. So was the Sunday Truth, the forerunner to the Sunday Sun. Murders were rare, but not exceptional. But a lot of publicity was given to them, in the newspapers of the day. But I think there's a fascination nowadays. You only have to look at shootings in America and how much publicity that gets around the world. I think that's a never-ending interest of people. It's not a morbid interest, but it's just a sad reality of life.
These days, it's obviously a very sensitive subject. The debate going on in our society about, do you talk about these things or do you close them off? And I passionately, all my life since I was a little boy, have very much believed that it's better to be open and talk about these things in the hope that maybe you can work out how to prevent them or correct them or help people. It's more important to talk about them, to hide them. I grew up with lovely old people that had been deeply affected by tragedies in the past, and they talked about, they used to say, "Oh, don't talk about black sheep in the family," and you should, bury your skeletons in the cupboard. People didn't want to talk about this stuff, and I think it's not very healthy to bottle it away. I think it's really important, especially to focus as well on the work of unsung heroes. Quite often in Queensland, where our podcast is based, police have copped a bad rap for a long time. There was a period of time when our police force was terribly corrupt. But despite that, over the whole period of time that we've had a police force in our state, there has been some amazing detectives and detective work and great police that have, despite some of those obstacles, managed to bring justice for families affected by the horrible tragedy of homicide.
Well, that's true, and the technology of those days was, I guess, generally limited to fingerprints. It didn't have DNA evidence or the material that was available. Although some of that has been preserved, and I think that interest in the community is important. I remember as a young boy looking at the family that sometimes drive past Boca Road. That was a daunting sort of experience when they tell you the sorts of people who are in there. It was a very foreboding sort of place to go by. But some of the murders today are now being solved many, many years after they were committed. Part of that is in relation to the publicity around it. There's a trigger of some memory or something that was said years ago. Sometimes that can be fortified by the DNA evidence that the police may have been able to keep. So, I think it's important to keep a lot of these alive so that people who are offenders should know until the day they die they still face the risk of serving time in jail.
It's interesting you say that, Paul. I worked for many years with the Director of Prosecution's Office. I have no legal qualifications, but I worked in administration as a clerk, and I played a role with my colleagues in overseeing different cases and their listing, having to work with victims of crime and police at different levels, members of the community. And it is so important that one of the things I'd like to achieve through our podcast is to help people understand how the criminal justice system works, that it's an adversarial system. It's based on the idea that a person's innocent until proven guilty. And then also to look at how it's changed, not only in Queensland, but in Australia as well over time. And where relevant, I would like to talk about some of those issues. I often find that with podcasts, people don't always understand the nuances of how the system kind of works, and there has been gradual change over time as well, just as there's been improvements in investigation and their techniques and the scientific evidence that they're at police's disposal. The system itself has changed and become different. And I very passionately believe as well, Paul, that the anonymity of history should not apply to offenders of bad crimes.
Very bad crimes in a lot of cases.
I'm not saying everyone's past should be dredged up, but some of the worst bastards in the history of our country committed their offences in this state, and they've been lost. Time has given them sort of the peace of the grave, and in some cases, I think that's absolutely wrong. They deserve to remain, the bastards they were. And through Murder Trails, through this series, I'm going to be interviewing former criminals and existing criminals, former police and existing police. I'm going to be interviewing family members related to not only victims but also to killers. Wow. And we've got a really good selection over the next 12 months of really interesting people with personal connections with the criminal justice system, with historic crimes. One thing, Paul, I might point out to viewers and listeners is that Murder Trails, with both my Murder Trails podcast and with my Crime Tours Australia tours that we run, we've always had an ethical structure, and that is we don't talk about any crime that's within the last 25 years. I find it pretty reprehensible sometimes with many modern podcasts that are out there on true crime, that they air material about modern crimes. It doesn't give the families of victims and the families of perpetrators, it doesn't give them enough kind of protection. I mean, they have a right to they already usually get covered in modern media, these stories in any case. our focus is on historic crime, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, and it always has been, and I've certainly respected you, Jack, for doing that. That's a one generation
One
gap,
generation gap.
between those crimes, so that they're not they're hard for a lot of people, the families, as you say, and that's good because those historic crimes, a lot of them are worse than some of the crimes of today, but it brings to the fore how bad some people are. And you said before about if you're found not guilty, you're either guilty or not guilty, and you're innocent until proven guilty. I still like the old Scottish third alternative verdict of not proven.
Not proven.
I think sometimes juries, and we can talk about this in the future, juries sometimes would think, oh, I think he's guilty, but we don't really want to say he's not guilty. That's why the Scots have had this not proven verdict. I can't say it in my Scottish way, but I think that might be a way to appease some juries. And the issue is, are juries the best way? Or with COVID, where you've had a lot of judge-only trials, whether or not that's a better way for our judicial and criminal system moving forward. And sometimes people would walk free and they've been found not guilty, but the police know in their heart of hearts that almost certainly they were guilty, but the way the jury considered it and the way the case was presented meant that sometimes bad people walked free.
That's the reality. There's a case in Ipswich that I was going to address as part of the series later on, which is a prime example of that, and actually led to legislative changes in our state. But well, thanks, Paul, for today. Looking forward to picking up on our first episode.
Absolutely.
And we invite both listeners and viewers to join us on this journey of murder trails, presented by Jack Sim, sponsored by crimetoursaustralia.com.au. Look forward to sharing our first story with you soon. Discover Brisbane's criminal history. Join me, Jack Sim, and my team of guides as we explore Queensland's fascinating criminal past. Cases we explore include the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Betty Shanks murder, and the Vampire Killer. We have a range of different crime walks and coach tours. To book a tour, brisbanecrimetours.com.au or crimetoursaustralia.com.au. Look forward to sharing our dark past with you.